Hey everybody, welcome to our Global Game Jam 23 stream. It's been a while since I've been on stream, so apologies for that. I'm so glad to have you all here. We're going to talk all things game jams, and I'd like to introduce you to my amazing guests today for the stream, all veterans in the jam space. So who would like to go first in introductions? The infamous Code Monkey?
Hey everyone, hey, how's it going? Hey, my name is Hugo and I run the Code Monkey channel on YouTube. So yeah, I can't wait to be here with you all talking about game jams. It's gonna be fun. All right, thank you.
Sam?
Okay, I'll go. I'm Sam. I do YouTube videos on Samyam, mostly tutorials and little fun videos. I'm also building a website for AI generated textures, which is cool. And I've done a lot of jams. So excited to be here.
You can go ahead, Andy.
Cheers, Cal. So I'm Andy. I'm a developer in Copenhagen. I work at a studio making educational stuff to teach kids spelling and things. And previously, I worked at Unity as an advocate and developer in the games production team, like a whole bunch of stuff. And I've done a lot of jams for maybe 15 years, maybe 14 years. I don't know. A long time.
I was lucky enough to jam with Andy as well for a few of his jams, so definitely some quality here today. And as I said before, this is actually a part of our Global Game Jam series that we're doing. So Unity is a sponsor for Global Game Jam. We're going to be releasing a blog tomorrow as well with some fantastic resources. And we also have our own playlist. Just as a quick introduction to myself, I'm Cal O'Brien. I actually am the Influencer Program Manager here at Unity. So let's kind of just jump into it and kind of, we can talk about your guys' history with game jams. Code Monkey, would you like to kind of kick us off with, your background with game jams and like the work that you've done previously?
Sure, yeah. For me, game jams are actually quite interesting because I've been making games for quite a long time. It's been almost 15 years. So yeah, for me, game jams nowadays, not so much, but yeah, definitely used to do quite a lot of them. For me, one of the things that we're going to talk throughout this live stream is the many benefits of game jams, and one of them is being able to actually finish games. So that is one of the main skills that you can gain while in the game jam, which nowadays, thankfully, I've already developed that skill quite a lot, but still, I've done a handful of game jams. So there was one that I did quite a while ago about making an RPG game, and yeah, that was a fun project to work on, which is going to bring about one of the main topics for this, which is scope management. That's kind of always my big issue when doing game jams, is I always come up with way too many things to do. So yeah, but so that was a fun project, trying to mix a lot of elements together. Then I did another one, which was a racing RTS. That was really fun. That was a really interesting game jam about mixing two genres. So yeah, doing that, mixing racing and RTS was definitely very strange, but I think that one, the game came out quite well. So yeah, as a whole, I've done a bunch of game jams. They were all very interesting for me. They were mostly great learning experiences. Very stressful, but yeah, great learning experiences. So yeah, very great. And yeah, all of you, I hope you're joining the Global Game Jam. That should be fun. And that one is actually weekly jam, so you got a bit more time, so not as much stress. Usually the ones that I've done have been 2 days, but yeah, it's always fun, so I'm looking forward to talking to you all more about game jams.
No, it's amazing. And you kind of hit something really there, that the week long for Global Game Jam this year, which is quite rare. Usually it's a weekend game jam. But in this case as well, I'd say if it's your first game jam to go towards, like, you don't need to use the full week. You can set that time yourself, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, let's, Sam, what about yourself? Like, give us your background.
Sure. So my first game was actually for a game jam. I didn't really know how to get started making games, and I found out that this existed. So I was like, oh, this is perfect to like try to make something small and just learn new skills, which is why I still join game jams after 6 years of making games, because I like to learn new skills. And once there's a game jam, I'm like, how can I adapt this theme and learn something out of it? That's usually my goal, like creating something new and just learning. I used to be very big into VR. So a lot of game jams, I did VR games such as VRX, which is kind of like a Spider-Man swinging sort of VR game, not great for nausea, where you go around buildings and collect stuff. And just keeping like the scope small is very important for game jams. And we'll go over that as well, like Code Monkey mentioned. But I love them.
Yeah, they're always quite fun as well. And as you said, it's a great time to experiment with stuff when you're trying to like play around with it. And the fact that you made your first game in a game jam as well, that's a bit, I didn't know that. That's a big reveal. Amazing
it's a great
stuff.
place to start. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Andy, yourself, let's look at your long history of jams.
I mean, I kind of used game jams to experiment with stuff. Like often if you're working on a project for like 6 months or a year or longer, that project's usually quite like set. So I kind of used it as a chance to experiment outside of the realms of that project, or just try pretty wacky stuff and see if it works. So like if you put up, I think slide 1 or on the screen. Okay, anyway, so like, for example, like a game, so like game jams, like, can you make a game for like 10 players or 8 players around like a screen, right? So like, this was purely a one-day experiment. Like, is that even possible? So a lot of this is kind of like, is it possible? Because like my normal, say, day job is not really going to sort of fringe on that too much. And like the top one was, I think, Flappulous Rift, which was like what the Oculus DK1 had just come out, and no one really knew how to do VR. And like everyone, I'd kind of done a simple Flappy Bird clone. So it was like, can you port a 2D game to VR? Like, is that even possible? And in sort of that scope of a 1 day or 3 day jam was a pretty good. I usually use it just to experiment with wacky stuff. That's pretty much it.
No, yeah, it's as we said, like it's one of the best times to actually start playing around with, you know, mechanics, both design wise, but also even technically as well, like using different components, different systems to get a, you know, a unique result or something unique. It doesn't have to be a amazing polished game at the end of it. It has to just be something that you get something out from it yourself at the end. But yeah, so that's kind of like a very brief history of everyone. I'd like to take this moment to actually, you know, jump a little bit into some of the projects you mentioned there. Like I think Code Monkey, you mentioned your racing RTS game. Would you want to just touch on, you know, how you went about even just that approach for that jam? Like what was the process that you took for it?
Well, the first thing always starts with the theme. That's always the main thing about game jams, waiting for the theme and then trying very painfully to come up with a quick idea that sounds good and that is possible to do within that time frame. So yeah, for that one, I think it was mixing genres. I think that was it, mixing 2 different genres. So yeah, racing and RTS, those are definitely not 2 genres that usually get put together. So yeah, that was an interesting one. And for me, the design process, I always start by designing on paper. Personally, I know there's a lot of excellent online tools nowadays for collaboration and a bunch of things, but mostly I do it by myself. So for me, just using regular pen and paper, that works perfect. So just starting to write down some ideas, then starting to make the game, come up with the original idea, and then try to flesh it out. But as always, try to keep scope in check. That is always the big issue. It's very easy to come up with something and then you end up with something that is definitely impossible to do no matter how long you work. So yeah, that was definitely it was an interesting game though. It's always a great learning experience, coming up with different unique things. It's always great. That's pretty much it. Whenever I do a game jam, I always learn something new. So yeah, I definitely encourage people, if you've never done one, definitely participate. You will learn quite a lot.
Was this the first time you did a racing type game before, or had you played around with it before? Oh, okay.
Yeah, which I have to say that is probably not something you should do. You probably shouldn't do a genre you've never done. I mean, depends if you want to take it as a learning experience or actually build something. But yeah, if you want to build something complete, then it's usually not a very good idea to start with a genre that you've never done. So yeah, for me, racing is not a genre that I usually do. So yeah, that was definitely a lot of the time spent during that jam was learning how to actually make a car driver, how to make an AI car driver, all those things. So yeah, that part was interesting.
Amazing. The project itself, like we have it on screen at the moment, you can see your process as how you went about it. Of course, this is an edited video, so we don't get to see the pain or anything or the struggling, but it looks fantastic as well. But as you see, it's about experimenting and, you know, playing around with things. But I would agree with you that it's definitely daunting to try something new at a game jam, but also it is also the perfect time to try something new because it's outside the realm of, a paycheck or anything like that. You're kind of just doing it for fun. So it's definitely a good time. But yeah, we'll jump on to Sam now. Sam, you actually have a very interesting project to show that you did recently for a jam.
Yeah, for Ludum Dare 52, which I think is still in the voting era or timeline. But I made a game about a little bee, and the theme was harvest. So I was trying to think of different ideas with harvest, different than what would usually come up to mind, like a farming game, because I'm like, I don't really care for farming or strategy games personally. And I'm tired of like these fast action-packed games, like, oh, you must complete this within this deadline. So I made a game about a bee whose sole purpose is to just fly around and enjoy life and collect pollen, which does increase your life on the back end. There's some like hidden logic, but in reality, there's really nothing to do except fly. And then ultimately you just die.
That's depressing.
Like everything in life. But yeah,
educational.
The purpose is to like be in the moment and enjoy life as it is.
Visually, it looks great. It definitely looks very calming. So yeah.
Thank you. I used an
we were going
asset.
for, so yeah, definitely succeeded.
Thank you. I used a Unity asset actually.
It's amazing.
On the store. So
was it multiple assets or was it all from the same pack?
The environment was one asset, and then the bee was another asset.
Okay, so it's actually it meshes quite well. So I think having an eye for that as well is important. But no, it's amazing. It's actually interesting that you kind of went, I say, against the grain. That in terms of you didn't want to gamify it too much. You wanted to make it a really nice, solid experience, and you leaned into that rather than being like, oh, I have to race around catching all the pollen or have to get honey for whatever it is. You actually just went, I want to just be a bee.
Yeah, and I think that with many game jams, a lot of people are like, I need to have like a goal that this player must like complete, like a fast action-paced goal, and it doesn't have to be that way. It can just be an experience.
No, yeah, I think I think we can all agree as well. Like, it doesn't always have to be some big goal. I know, even from my own experience, I've had a lot of game jams where there is no ending. You just keep kind of playing with whatever it is, with that toy aspect. So definitely something to think about if you're actually doing a game jam is it doesn't always have to be some big finished result. You can just have fun with what it is. But yeah, no, that's amazing. The game looks beautiful. It looks really calming and relaxing. Probably something you could chill with a cup of tea or something, which is my personal drink of choice for relaxing. But yeah, it's amazing. Do you want to talk about a little bit about the VRX game you had as well? You talked about you experimented with that in your early deving.
Yeah, I was big into VR, so I joined some VR game jams. And this one, like, I like to try new things. And so I've always wanted to be kind of like Spider-Man in VR.
Not in real life, though.
I mean, it'd be a little complicated in real life. So with this one, the themes I submitted to 2 jams, Never Ending and Medicine, were the themes. And so I was like, how can I combine these 2 themes to make, I guess, simple MVP, a minimum viable product that works and would just like be fun to play. So I just came up with this idea that you swing around and collect these medicines for no apparent reason.
Spider-Man getting pills.
Collect the RXs, deliver them. I don't know. There's not really any purpose to it, but it's just fun to like make the VR mechanics and experiment with that.
How nauseous did you get while playtesting? That's my question.
I'm pretty sure I had to like take it off after a while because I got nauseous.
Yeah.
And the glasses are a hassle too because I have to like keep putting it on and off.
It's pain, yeah. My first game jam was when the Oculus SDK 2 was out, and I was in like VR for like 2 or 3. This wasn't even for my game. I was just playing someone else's game. First time ever using VR, and it made me so sick. And it wasn't even moving. It was just old refresh rates or whatever it is. It was just I couldn't stand it.
Although with a game like this, being nauseous is kind of realistic, right? Because if you're actually Spider-Man swinging around, you're going to gain a lot of
motion and momentum.
Yeah.
G-forces as you're falling. Oh.
So
yeah, I mean after a while, I would just like kind of close my eyes and be like kind of opening it, like play test it. Like,
yeah, I'm totally testing this. No, that's amazing. Honestly, especially for a jam, like, do you know how long this jam was for this one?
I think I did this in like 2 days.
Damn, that's really good. Was this your first time doing VR development at all, or was it kind of you tinkered around with it a bit?
No, I used to like lead the VR club at my university.
Oh, okay, cool. So
nerd.
this was like, okay. There's nothing wrong with being a nerd. We're all nerds here in terms of our interest in development. But yeah, no, that's amazing. And you had one other game to show us as well, which was VR Spirits, which is another VR title.
Yeah, this was just like the themes were minimalistic and spirits, and so I really wanted to focus on something really small. And so it's kind of like the character has a state machine where it attacks you, and then it also changes color, and you're supposed to hit it with the wand with the correct color. So there's cauldrons next to you, and you have to dip your wand into it to get that color, and then like smack it, and then defend against it when it turns red. It's just a really simple mechanics, but something that would be fun to play was my goal with these game jams. Like simple, but something that works, can deliver.
Oh yeah, I think that setting yourself a goal, which we actually will talk about a little bit more later, is always, I think, key for setting yourself up for success with your expectations as well. I think going to a jam completely aimless without an idea of what you want to do, you can even go into a jam with like a full plan. That can go to shambles very quickly though. But it's always good to set something in your head of what you want to do. But yeah, no, it's amazing. Taking on VR for a jam, I would never even try.
It's not that bad.
Okay, I'll take your word for it and try it out.
A lot of testing is annoying.
Okay, actually, no, I don't want to. I was going to say I have the Oculus Pro or the Meta Pro. I don't want to use that for a jam. I'd be sick. So no, I'm good. I'm not going to do a VR jam.
You could do a tandem jam, right? Someone's wearing their VR headset the whole time, and you're just developing the game using them as a
guinea pig.
Live tester, not a guinea pig.
Okay, just make it a very nauseous experience just for the sake of it. But okay, so Andy, let's jump on to you then. So the first project you'd like to sort of talk about is for Duck Planet, which I also had involvement in, but I'll let you take the lead on it to talk about. Yeah,
so as well as doing like little jams just to experiment with, can you do something with a webcam? Can you do something with this? Also, it's kind of fun just to jam with other people, like people you have worked with before or not. So Cal and I, actually, could you jump to the Duck Pot game first? There's kind of like a segue here of how I cheated. I mean, tactically used.
Cheated.
Okay, so this was for Game Maker Toolkit Jam, and it was a jam of me, Cal, and a good friend Ethan. And we're all in completely different countries. So it's like, it was a real like remote jam. And, you know, Cal was doing 3D art. So all the 3D art there is done by Cal. Ethan was doing a lot of programming, and I was doing shaders and code as well. And it was kind of like an excuse to make a game where you're a duck who's a wizard, and you can throw dice and they cast spells depending what side they land on. And you have to gain as many coins as possible. Plus there's little crows that steal your gold and money and stuff. So it was less of an experimental thing, but more like, let's do this. And we kind of had this idea coming into the jam, then had to kind of fit it into what the theme was, which was roll the dice. Because we knew we wanted a duck, we knew we wanted to run around and hold stuff. Just so happened that roll the dice fit. If it was something else, we wouldn't have been great. and kind of this then segues kind of like to Duck Planet, which was another duck themed part of the duck multiverse or whatever.
Why so many ducks?
Well, this was because Cal, in this jam, it was me, Cal, and a good friend and colleague of mine, Gabriel. And Cal was only available for like half a day or something.
Yeah, so, I was having surgery when the jam started.
So we were like, okay, let's kind of reuse. Like, I'm a big fan of kind of, I know it's sort of cheating, but like reusing, like if you've got code, if you've got some stuff, kind of like reusing some things rather than reinventing the wheel again. So this sort of orbital character controller is a modified one of the duck, the previous one, which I made a physics character controller for that, and then just ported it to be basically how Mario Galaxy does it. And then Cal was like, well, I don't want to animate and rig a duck, animate and rig a new character. I'll just reuse the duck and then make a new spin animation. Definitely not borrowed from Crash Bandicoot, a crown. And so it was kind of like reusing some stuff that we'd already had in a previous jam, but then, you know, building on top of it. And I know some jams don't really allow that and some jams do, but in this case, it was a chance for us to just focus on learning actually multiplayer technology, which is something I hadn't really done before, and I don't think any of us had really tapped into it.
It was our first time. It was the first jam we did it as well. Like this was with Coherence was the gang that did the architect for this, and it was Andy and Gabriel. They were the leads on this for technical part of it, and it was our first time doing it. And like to get a multiplayer game in a jam is also ambitious by itself, but we were able to get this up and going. So
it was like learning multiplayer as well as building it. So we were like, okay, let's reuse some stuff that we've already done and then just sort of try and multiplayify it.
So the goal is to keep the crown for as long as possible.
Yeah, if you have the crown, you're the king of the planet, right? And you can lose the crown if another duck does like a spin attack and it sort of casts off the crown to tumble. Or you get hit by an asteroid. It's a pretty terrible planet to be a king of, I'll be honest, because there's asteroids. Just
a lot of asteroids, yeah.
But it was mostly like a chance to kind of experiment with networking and physics and things like this, right? So like when you pick up the crown, you kind of gain physics authority of the crown because you have to wear it on your head. And when you get hit, so we got King Quack and they have names. So I'll be honest, we kind of had this working, like running around a planet, hitting people at the end of day one. And then we just then sort of built on top of it with this whole physics crown and all kinds of stuff. So this wasn't using netcode. This was using Coherence, which is like a real-time multiplayer SDK. And this was part of their themed game jam, basically. But like, so the point I want to make is like we kind of reused some stuff, which is okay in some cases, but it allowed us to just focus on the actual bit we were kind of like learning, or we wanted to explore a little bit more, I guess.
No, that's I think as well. Like if you're a artist or if you're a programmer or whatever it is, like time constraints, whatever it is, at the end of the day, the game jam is for learning and for having fun. So reusing assets, using assets by other people, like we have folks like Kenny's who does fantastic assets. The asset store has a bunch of free assets that you can use and download. Like even in your day-to-day game deving, like if you haven't got time to make assets, whatever it is, use what you have available to you. And if you're doing a solo game jam and you're not an artist, use those assets. It makes sense to you. You're not a fake developer for using them in any regard. So it's all about getting the game done and getting whatever you want to achieve out of it versus being this ideal image in your head of what a game dev is or professional, I guess, is for a game jam. It's a game jam. No one's going to be like, how dare you, and arrest you. So don't worry about it. So yeah, Andy, do you want to talk about, you have a few other like older titles that you worked on, so in your earlier jams as well. Do you want to talk about them a little bit? For such as Son of a Pitch and Shader Planet? You're muted at the moment.
Oh yeah, sorry. So if you cut to slide 3, I guess. Yeah, there we go. So another thing with game jams is it's a good chance to learn new stuff, because it kind of gives you a very bite-sized, smaller, condensed timeline. I'm pretty sure everyone here has said, oh, I'm going to go learn X. And then they're sort of like, oh, I'll do it later, I'll do it later, I'll do it later. Whereas this is like, okay, in 3 days, I've got to learn this very, very quickly and imminently. So for example, like these are 2 other game jams. One was learning, I won't mention it, Godot engine from scratch. So it was
how
like,
dare you get off the street?
It was like in 4 days, can you build a small game, like kind of learning from scratch? And obviously this can be applied to sort of any tool technology. I don't really know Blender, but it'll be fun to be like, okay, let's try and learn Blender, like super quick and condensed, because then you're very focused on what you need to achieve. And the bottom one was actually half of Global Game Jam, because I was like tech supporting it. So I didn't really have a chance to like build a proper game. So I was like, oh, I'm going to learn shader graph at the same time. And how far can you get with 0 textures? So everything is just done in this. So I made a planet diorama in between people saying, oh, Unity is not building, like with that voice. So you can
they all sound like that, yeah.
so you can kind of use it as well to learn new things and sort of apply them in a very condensed, I guess, time frame or timeline, rather than just being, oh, I'm going to learn that later. You could be like, I have to learn it this weekend now. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a nice way of burst learning stuff. Yeah.
Well, Sam and Hugo or Code Monkey, would you guys agree with that it is a good opportunity to kind of like really focus down on something?
Oh yeah, if there's something you've always wanted to learn and you keep pushing it back, then well, a game jam is one way to force you to have a start and an end. So yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, and on itch.io, there's like jams, directed jams. So if you want to learn a specific technology, there's sometimes like Godot Godot. I don't even know how to say it.
You're
Godot
dividing the
jam.
community for that like already by not knowing how to say it all.
Or yeah, some jams have specific themes that you can purposefully join to like hone your craft and be better skilled at that, which I do that sometimes.
No, it makes sense. I think the only one that I've ever joined was the coherence one with Andy in terms of just even learning about that tech. But I can see that very much being a benefit, like being focused into something rather than putting it off and putting it off. Like the only time I've actually done 3D art is with Andy on game jams, because every other time I'm trying to do it. By the way, I'm a 2D developer for the audience that don't know. I'm a 2D developer and artist. I hate doing 3D. Getting into the meshes and everything is a mess. But the fact that when I'm in a game jam, they're like, yeah, let's do a 3D game. I'm like, okay, dragging my feet and then learning how to do stuff. But ultimately, it improves for the next time as well. I'm able to do much things faster and faster. So definitely, I think is a good opportunity to do. But yeah, I guess then we'll move on to the next topic, unless we have any questions from the chat regarding sort of the projects that we just showed there. But in regards to, when you're say for someone who's doing their first game jam, they may or may not have like a lot of game dev experience. What would your advice be for those people that are just getting in? Like a lot of people will probably have their first global game jam coming up this week. So your advice to them. Sam, you want to go first? You put your hand up like a school child. I'm like, you can do that.
There's no raised hand feature on this thing. Since my first game was with a game jam, I was not really worried with like the quality, which I know a lot of people worry about how it's going to turn out, and that's why they don't even join things in the first place or submit their games. They're like, oh my god, my game isn't good, so I won't submit it. And that defeats the purpose of the game jam. So just like don't worry about the end product. Just submit something and be a small scoped. Ideally, if you have no game dev experience, you could like look up, like don't make like a multiplayer game on your first game or something.
An MMO, right?
Yeah,
MMO Battle Royale.
MMO RPG. Just make like a small game and something you're interested in that fits the theme, and submit it. That's the most important thing. Just submit it.
No, that makes sense.
Submit.
Hugo, Andy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say just join. Just go ahead and join. That's really the most simplest, most useful advice. Just go ahead and join. There's no point in being afraid. If there's something you want to do, just go ahead and do it. Don't worry. There's no penalty for making something not good. I mean, everybody's first game is not good. I mean, my first few like 20 games were trash. So yeah, definitely don't be afraid of making something quote unquote bad. Just go ahead and do it. It's experience is one of the best things you can have as a game developer, programmer, artist, anything. So yeah, if there's something you want to do, just start and just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Andy? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I agree again with everyone else. Like, I usually say like as Juiced Up 25 in the chat has said, like one mechanic only. That's something I try to do. Like one thing that you do, and then make sure it like is kind of fun to do. So like in the duck game, pick up a dice, you can throw it. That's it. And then you just try and like build on top of that. In the planet one, it's you can run around and spin attack other ducks. That's like it. That's the only thing you can do. And then try and like juice that up. Like I've seen a lot of people who join jams who are like, I'm going to do this, 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 and you can have a skill tree, and you can have this, an inventory system, and it's kind of like take all that and kind of just do one thing like super well. Like there's two major games, actually both Unity, Super Hot and Surgeon Simulator. Those are both game jam games, and both of them are like prime examples of. Actually, the game jam game versions are prime examples of like one mechanic done super well. Like Super Hot, time moves as you move. It's so simple, but like they build everything around it. In Surgeon Simulator, you have to pick up items poorly, I guess. Very physics driven. So, they kind of did that in the game jam, and then that validated that one mechanic, and then build on that for the actual game. So. Yeah, that one mechanic thing also gives you a nice limitation, and you can also get it up and running pretty quickly and then see if that mechanic is even fun or good, and then sort of build off of it from there. That's kind of the main thing. I completely agree with Sam. Like having something done but small by the end is much better than half done but not, not there. Yeah.
No, I would agree with that as well. Oh no, go ahead, Sam.
Oh, sorry. I also want to add that it's okay to use assets depending on the rules, right? Like read the rules. Usually they tell you if you're allowed to use assets or not. But when I was starting out, I thought using assets were cheating or wasn't like good because I didn't know, right? I didn't know how it worked. But it's totally fine. And most people actually reuse previous code or assets from the store. And like if I don't know 3D modeling, so if I'm making a 3D game and it's not like boxes, then I'm going to need assets or I'm going to have to learn 3D modeling in like a day. So it's okay to use assets.
No, I fully agree with that. Like there's no one sitting over your shoulder. Like, of course, don't steal from people, I guess. If someone's working on something, you go over and look at their code and bring it over, unless they're, of course, okay with that. But yeah, use whatever you have at your disposal. Like, it's for you. Of course, I know Andy mentioned, like, Superhot and what was the other game? Superhot was one of them. I can't remember the other one.
Surgeon
Simulator, yeah. So, like those are really good cases of like, finding the fun. And that's what's really important when you're doing games and doing game dev or even just game jams, finding something that's fun and then building off of that. Like I'm very much a big component of making something that's like a toy. You can play around with it without any rules or mechanics around it. It just feels fun to play with, and then building a game from there. So always doing your game jam, especially your first game jam, focus on finding the fun in what you're doing. You don't need to have this big amazing game. Like, it could literally just be about placing blocks and building a house. And if you find fun in that, you're sorted. So yeah, that's pretty amazing. I think I saw a message from someone in the chat, Carlos Sev, who had no question, just to pass a hi to Samyam, please. And also everyone else too. But Coco Dev also had something to say, which was, I think, is very important for your first jam or first any event in the industry, is don't go alone. Try to join some fun team and venue. The most fun part is speedrunning game dev in a team. So basically, what would you guys say to that in terms of, would you prefer jamming solo or do you prefer jamming with the team?
I like jamming solo personally because it's like I focus on I want to learn this thing. I focus on that. Once there's another person, now it's like, no, I have to think about them and what they're doing, which is good in some cases, right? But in my case, I like to focus on this one task and just be like, okay, I'm doing this. If there's another person, it helps out a lot with skills that I might not have, but it's also like another wild card that you're having to deal with, right? Unless you know them already. But that's my personal taste. I know some people work great in teams.
I mean, those two are very different things. So yeah, both have their pros and cons. I mean, working by yourself, you only have yourself to manage. So yeah, that part is definitely easier, but having someone else definitely helps to share the workload. So someone does the code, someone does the art. That's the simplest split possible. And yeah, with that, you can definitely get something better done. But yeah, definitely learning how to work with others is definitely a skill, which is a skill that you can learn quite well in a game jam. So if the goal is to learn how to work with others, then I can't think of any better place than starting with a game jam.
Andy, yourself? Well, I had to jam with Cal, so...
Oh, I knew this was coming.
No, I don't know, like, I like usually jamming with other people, because you get to learn from them. But not too many people, because usually like 2 or 3, I guess. Like, actually, the game being shown was called Son of a Pitch. I have to say the P. This was a whistling game, and that was me and one other person. I did the code, and someone else did a lot of like kind of the art and these things. And it's visually simple, but you had to whistle into the microphone, and the pitch and volume make the thing paint in different ways. And you have to kind of like fill in. Obviously, the guy playing this is not great at the game right now. This was actually like kind of the halfway point of testing it to see if it makes sense. So this was me and one other person, because I'm not really like an artist. So yeah, usually a team that's that small. If it's a team of 20, I mean, that's bigger than the company, the studio I work at. So maybe something a little smaller. Yeah.
My first game jam at Global, actually my first global game jam, was at my site. There was a team of like 20-25 people all working on one project. Every time I looked over, it was chaos and I didn't know what was going on. So for your first game jam, I would recommend at least doing it. Like CodeMonkey gave the perfect example of an artist and a programmer, is a very good like fit for it. Usually at global game jam sites as well, if there's someone who does audio or music, they're usually doing multiple projects. They'll actually work with a few folks. Of course, they won't give you like a whole soundtrack. They'll give you a few pieces of music and some audio, but they won't be giving you a full like plethora of music options. You'll ask what you want and take it from it. But yeah, I would aim for that two perfect team. Like for I don't like jamming with large teams, and I don't like jamming with strangers for the most part. It's only happened once with me, and it was a very good experience, to be honest. But I usually like knowing who I'm working with and knowing their skills. So if we're designing whatever it is, we can scope accordingly. So that's another thing we can talk about a little bit later as well. But yeah, we have a question there was a question. So Chris Watts 2023 asked, what do you think about publishing game jam games to platforms like SideQuest, which I believe is a third party like store for VR titles?
Yeah, it's like you can't get it published on the actual Oculus store, so you do it on SideQuest.
Okay.
Kind of like the itch.io of Oculus in a way.
Okay. Is it worth publishing your game jam games on there for people to play, or do you think?
I mean, I'm not like super experienced in SideQuest. I feel like the games there are a little more polished than on itch.io. And yeah, for sure, if you have the game, I mean, why not? Right? It's just
definitely publish it somewhere for someone to play. Definitely.
Do you think that's an important aspect of your game jams that you should share with people after the fact, not just?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, part of the goal is learning by yourself, but also part of it is getting feedback from others. So that part is extremely important. Always get someone to play, and if you put it on itch and you participate in one of these game jams, like the Global Game Jam, there's always people wanting to play other people's games. So yeah, that's an excellent, because learning how to take feedback is an extremely important part of being a game developer. So the more you learn about that, the better. And a game jam is an excellent place to get some more feedback.
No, of course. We have a question from Ninjobu or Ninjobu. I don't know if I'm saying either of those ways right, but are there specific game jams that you would suggest for first-time game jammers or new game devs? I would, off the bat, even just recommend Global Game Jam, as it's usually a really good site with a plethora of experiences, and you can usually lean with someone who is more experienced in game jams or more experienced that will actually support with you if they're open to that, of course. No one's going to be forced into doing anything they don't want to do, of course. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. But you all might have different opinions.
I mean, if you go on each, you can find like 100 game jams. So I would say just pick one. I don't know.
There's some schools and education places that do organize kind of like intro to game dev tutorials and game jams, where at the beginning of the game jam there'll be some kind of talks or lectures and stuff, or some kind of workshop to get people going. Like in Copenhagen here, there's a couple of universities, and I've actually gone and given like a talk like intro to 2D for Unity. Like literally, you don't really know Unity or anything. You got a bunch of PNGs. How do you get them in? How do you add physics and stuff? And that's usually at the beginning of that game jam organized by the school. Then they probably go off and make a 2D thing over that. So definitely look at like local schools, because they tend to be pretty good at actually arranging that stuff. But yeah, as Mr. Monkey said, first name code, second name, Mr. Monkey said, like, yeah, itch definitely has a bunch of jams which are like connected to games made with them and stuff.
Also, YouTubers host jams. I hosted a jam with Wannabe Manisha last year. And I don't know if CodeMonkey, you hosted one?
No, yeah. Managing something like that is a ton of work. So yeah, that's one of those things that it's, as an idea, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, organizing one definitely takes quite a lot. But yeah, it's always fun. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can, if you like content creators, sometimes they host jams, so you can participate through that too.
There is I'm going to echo that as well, because a lot of the content creator community around Unity, and even just content creators in general, are great communities to share in general your game dev work and what you're working on, or your just jam titles, because everyone in those communities is aware of game dev content and what game dev is. So you're getting really pointed feedback. If you're trying to improve your skill set, not just your design thing, they'll be like, oh, you should have used the tile editor in Unity for easier placement of that art assets, or vice versa. But like even Vimlark, I know, he's not a Unity content creator, but he does a lot of like content feedback, and just because of his community, he does content feedback on game jam submissions, things like that. But yeah, I ultimately aim for your first game jam, like it doesn't matter where it is or if it's an experienced one or a brand new one, just do it. That's with anything with game dev and anything in any skill. Just go ahead and try whatever it is, be it music, art, programming. Just try it and you'll probably succeed. I say probably because you never know, but hopefully you succeed. But even if you don't, just keep trying. The first 10 games you make will probably be crap, but that 11th one might be amazing. So just keep going with it. So I guess we touched on it a little bit earlier about, going with someone to a jam or going by yourself. Like, how would you guys go about forming teams? Like working with friends versus working with, people who are at the event, just to finding a team there and then. Like, your opinions on that? Sam, you can go first if you don't like people.
Yeah, I usually do jams alone. But I also do some hackathons, and I do tend to do those in groups. But for those kind of events, if it's in person, usually I go around and talk to the different people and try to find out what their skill sets are to see how they can complement mine, and how we can work together. Because, in my case, I don't want to specifically have a super beginner on my team, not to be rude or anything, just because I don't want to spend like all the time teaching them. Whereas I would like to have someone, who knows their stuff. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you're like looking just to learn, then you'd find people who have that same goal. If you're looking to win, then you'd find people who want to win, because that's like another thing. Like some people are, I want to win the game jam. And that's like, they'll do everything to do that. So find people with similar goals and people who complement your skills. And same thing online. There's forums on itch.io and whatnot.
There's someone in chat asking what kind of hackathon?
Just software engineering hackathons, blockchain hackathons.
So like building an app or something like robotics?
Yeah, in my case, like building an app. But I also do game jams.
Like usually hackathons would be like other tech, like websites, like as you said, apps, a lot of Arduino stuff. So it's less gamey, but you can, if you still go along, you can still talk to these people doing like weird Arduino stuff and be like, hey, how do we turn this into a game?
That makes sense. Andy and then Hugo as well, like your guys' opinion on forming teams in game jams.
Well, for me, I'm mostly alone, so I'm not sure I have much to contribute about that. But usually every game jam has kind of like a forum or something. So I would say definitely if you're looking for someone you don't know, definitely start there. There's always people looking for someone else to team up. But of course, if you already know someone, then starting to work with a friend can be a bit better, which I believe is how you two got started. So
I think also, I think some people think like if you've joined a game jam and you join a team, you're kind of, not to say you should abandon the team partway through, because it's not, it's not ideal, but like you can't collaborate with other people. And that's actually like a huge thing that I've noticed at game jams, like especially people who are good at making audio. It's like, I don't actually have numbers, but like I'm fairly sure if there's like 100 people at game jam, there might be 1 or 2 audio people. And they're like gold dust, because they're going to, basically everyone will need audio at some point, and then it's great to have someone on board of that. There's definitely some game jams I've been to where there's been like an audio person, and then they've just said, hey, if you come up to me and you need a sound effect for a chicken or a duck or an explosion, like I will make that for you in the jam. So they're not really tied to a team, but they'll collaborate with you in a bit. Like when I used to live in London, there was a game jam, And there's maybe like 30 games at the end. And there's the one audio guy worked on every single one because he just cranked out audio. So his name was in the credits of like every single game. And when the awards went up, he went on stage with like every team, which is kind of like a funny story. But he just did it to kind of like, I guess for I don't know, like he'd just say in return for just making you audio, just drop his portfolio or his email or something like this in the credits. So even though you could form a team or be part of a team, it's quite common to like have some shared stuff like, oh, hey, I know you've done this before in a shader. Could you come jump with me for like half an hour or something and then do that? So that's actually quite common as well. So yeah, if you're an audio person or you have a friend who's an audio person, bring them to a game jam. They will be gold dust. I guarantee it. Everyone realizes they have to add audio in the last 1 hour, and then that person's definitely make friends with that person very early.
Yeah, there's a lot of... Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you're good.
I keep interrupting you.
I know, it's okay. You're just bullying me. It's fine. Go ahead, Sam.
No, I noticed like in the Ludum Dare submissions, a lot of them, I was like checking my audio. I'm like, can't be right. They didn't add music. There's like some random sound effects, but they don't have music in the background. I guess they just forgot to add it or didn't have time. I'm like, it takes away from the experience a lot. Not having
I fully
sound.
agree with that. Like not having sound and audio, or if the audio or sound is off, like it actually can take away the whole experience of your game. My very first game jam game had no music, or I actually had audio hit sounds, but nothing else. So it would just be eerie quietness, and then like a hit sound whenever they attack. So it was almost like a void chamber with just like a crunch noise. It was like, it makes you feel uncomfortable. But yeah, no, audio people are like the unicorns of a game jam for the most part, in-person game jams at least. But yeah, you should think about all the aspects of your game while you're working on it, not just the one thing you're focusing in on. Very important, I think. But yeah, we can move on to the next topic unless there's anything else anyone wants to add to that. Are we good? Okay, I'm going to assume we're good because you didn't say anything. But yeah, so we're going to talk about scoping. Now, you'll probably all have different sort of opinions on this and like how you go about it. But let's say with Andy, like how would you go about scoping your project initially? Like we'll go one by one, and then you can also chip in as well while we're talking about this as well, because scoping is super, super vital for jams.
I kind of cheat, so I probably shouldn't admit that. So before a jam, I usually think, oh, I want to do a game in this style or this, like a racing game or a platformer game. Like I kind of think a little bit beforehand and then try and fit the theme into that. And that's kind of, I guess, so you don't turn up and then you have the theme and stuff. So I do kind of try and scope a little bit beforehand. Like if you're doing an FPS, then, okay, I'm probably going to need this. But just like mentally sort of scope out what is needed or required. Again, kind of cheating, but then at least you're coming and then you can kind of try and fit. And it's kind of fun to fit, let's say a racing game in with a theme that's totally not suited. Then you try and merge them in. But again, like the whole one mechanic thing keeps scope really tight and really small. And it stops you from adding all this extra stuff. And I do think a lot of people who go into jams, they scope way too big. And they always say, oh, we'll finish it after the jam. And like, not to be negative, like 99% don't. So like, yeah, definitely keeping that scope tight is super important. If your game has 10 characters, make sure you've kind of got a nice pipeline to make 10 characters super quick. Like, yeah, it's definitely super tricky. I don't think there's a real like equation to scoping really well, except for
I think your general tip of just focus on one mechanic, I think that's the best tip possible. Yeah, if you just focus on one and just polish it to the max, that's usually better than having like 5 mechanics, all of them half-baked. So yeah, just focus on one. That is probably the best tip.
I just want to touch on what you said, Andy, about the coming in with the idea. I do that sometimes too, but then I find that with a theme, it just throws off my idea completely. And it actually, I feel like, is quite restrictive because I'm so bent on making it with how I imagined and like fitting it into the theme, that making a new game more centered on the theme would have, without like having the constraint of that previous idea, might have been better for creativity, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I was the same. I quit a jam. The first it was a Ludum Dare jam, but I went into it with that pre-baked idea, and whatever the theme was, it's rattled me so much that I was like, I'm not even doing this jam anymore. I quit. Like, just full on throwing the towel. So I agree with you, Sam. It can be going in with that it could be a hindrance more than a benefit.
Yeah. For scoping, personally, I try to do that, have like a few features or things that I want to accomplish. And I also try to think of how I want the person to feel while they're playing the game and after they play the game. And so I guess I was a software engineer. I quit. But we used like sprint methodology, which is like every 2 weeks you have goals you need to meet, and then you kind of plan little tasks that you want to accomplish to get to that goal. And so I use that in game jams. I have like a Trello board that I make for game jams and even my projects, and I put in the features, all the features that I have to do. And then every day I'm like, okay, I want to accomplish these features, and I kind of reevaluate during the game jam, like if I'm meeting these goals, and if I'm not, then what should I change or remove so I can publish something in the however long amount of time that jam is.
Yeah, with regards to scope, I'd also say that it's pretty important to clarify for yourself what exactly you're trying to do. Are you trying to make a polished game, or are you trying to just go for a learning experience, learn new tools, something like that? So yeah, having a clear goal on what exactly is your objective with joining the jam, that can definitely help manage scope. I mean, if you already know, okay, I'm just doing this to learn, then at that point, maybe implementing more mechanics might be more beneficial than just focusing on one and polish, if the goal is indeed to learn. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to ask a question. My brain felt. Oh, actually, I think something you said, Sam, there regarding your Trello board and managing that. Like, if you're not reaching that mark, like how this is a question for everyone. In fact, that like, are you comfortable like scoping back, or what catches you to make yourself scope back if your scope is too big? Does that make sense? Is that a question that makes sense? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like the time, how much time you have left. If you see that what you thought, usually you put on a feature and you're like, oh, it's going to take like an hour, and then it takes like 3. And so if you see like as the time is progressing that these things are not happening as fast as you wish, then it's usually wise to be like, okay, what should I not do? Or how should I actually rethink this? And actually now ChatGPT is helpful to like give you ideas, and you might like be stuck in a creative block. You can be like, this is my game and I have to rescope it. And ChatGPT will be like, here are some ideas that you can do.
Yeah, I would say ChatGPT in terms of game jam, definitely great, especially if you're going solo, using it as kind of an AI assistant to do a bunch of brainstorming. And yeah, whether brainstorming at the beginning or for cutting scope, yeah, I think that's an excellent tool that can be very useful nowadays, yeah.
Andy, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't make a board with cards and stuff because I guess maybe I'm a bit more chaotic when jamming, but also kind of like use Jira and stuff during the day, and then I kind of try and use this to cut loose from that. But everyone has their own kind of flow, right? And yeah, I don't really have much to add.
No,
I agree.
Fun. I'm in the same boat with Andy in terms of not being super planned out. That's mainly because the people I work with also are like Andy, very chaotic. Like Ethan Bruins as well. He's a fantastic programmer as well. But yeah, I've never had a set like sort of schedule plan, and it only comes to scoping back is usually when, as you said, Sam, where it's like a time thing where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this thing, so let's remove X amount of characters, let's remove these animations, let's just make it super, super simple. And it's, yeah, so it's really to each your own in this case in terms of how you go about it, I think, is a fair way to go about it. And it's finding the more jams you do and the more game deving you do, you'll probably find your own stride in how you work. It's like with anything, and your own workflows is how you go about it is very unique to you. Some people like listening to audiobooks while they work to stay focused. Some people can't have any noise. They need noise cancelling headphones. So that's a very weird, what's the word? Educational moment to explain whatever it is. I can't remember what the word is for it, but yeah, each to your own, and you'll find a way that suits. We have a question. Pick croissant or pick. I'm gonna say pick Rossin to make it easier for myself. Ask, what is your take on boilerplate code at the start of a jam?
I mean, for me, I'm a huge fan of reusing code, writing some good clean code so you can reuse it in the future. So yeah, for me, I love it. But obviously, it always depends on the rules on the jam. Some jams allow you to reuse code, others force you to make the whole thing during the jam. So yeah, definitely check that. But yeah, if it is a possibility, then yeah, that can definitely help. I mean, there's no point in writing a health system that you've already done 100 times. There's no point in doing that all over again. So yeah, if it's within the rules of the jam, definitely use it.
Think smarter, not harder. Don't reinvent the wheel.
I guess building on that, I like to front load before the jam a bunch of boring stuff. Which I guess is kind of boilerplate, but like set up the version control, set up the Unity project, pull in the packages, which is cheating or whatever. But that way, when you come into the jam, you've kind of got a nice foundation with input, Cinevision. You kind of got the stuff there compiled, because you never know how long they will take. Subtle burn. But you kind of have that project all set up with version control and stuff beforehand. And then, as Mr. Monkey said, like bring your kind of code and boilerplate and stuff like that, because you're there to have fun, not to kind of take a while to, yeah.
It's not cheating if everyone does it, though.
Yeah, if everyone does it, it's just applied research.
No, yeah, I think like again, like each game jam has different rules and different judgments, whatever it is. But I will say is like, at the end of the day, it's about making a game. It's not about, the software that you're using or how you prep for the jam or anything. At the end of the day, the thing that's being looked at and weighted is the jam itself. Like, there's only so many ways. No, I was gonna say there's so many ways you can write a health bar system or a walking system. Of course, there's 10 different ways to do a single thing. There's no point redoing something that you're already well versed or well polished health system that you made for something else as a way of doing it. If you're trying to get to the game jam, trying to get to the fun, not the no one cares that you wrote this health bar system in the middle of a jam. Like, no, all the pretty stuff you see behind the scenes, the player doesn't see ever. So it's find the fun and make it fun. Don't worry about the I'm not a real game dev if I don't install Cinemachine during the jam or something. So all good there. Is there anything else there off the top of your head regarding the scoping and how you kind of go about it, or do you think you're kind of firm on that in terms of how you approach it?
I think there was a question. Someone was like, how do you know what to start with if you have an idea? They say, how do they know what exact code to use? Which, when I was starting, was a trick, because I was like, okay, I have this idea. How do I guess, make it? So it is a little hard when you're starting out. But as I said before, like just putting down the things that you need to do, like, oh, this character needs to move, or this finish line needs to activate. And once you have like a little list of the general concepts, then you can more easily like search up on tutorials or documentation how you would manage that. And
Frankenstein your game into whatever it can be. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Basically.
I think that's a very key aspect, especially if you're newer to programming, is design with anything. Like, even if you talk about like how you open a door, like designing opening a door, placing the hand on the handle, pulling the handle down or pulling the handle, whatever it is, moving the door, going through the door, closing the door. There's a lot of steps there that are involved. So think of that as your task list for what you need to do with your code, let's say. If you're making a platformer game, my character needs to move, my character needs to jump, my character needs to be able to die, which sounds bleak, but it's that kind of structure. I think design is also very important when it comes to your task list of what you should be coding. And as Sammy had said, there's loads of great tutorials out there on very specific mechanics and ways of doing things. You should definitely check out the tutorials that many Unity content creators are making, like Samyam herself and CodeMonkey. some solid. Don't look at Andy's stuff. I'm missing. Andy has some great Unite talks actually from the past on 2D stuff and lighting, so definitely worth checking that out in the past. But yeah, so I think that's very important. Is there anything else anyone wants to add to that as well?
Well, for those, I think those are essentially two questions. You've got the design part, which, like I said, comes across how you break an idea down. So opening a door, that involves first you have to approach the door, you have to be able to identify the door in front of it, and so on. So that is the design part, being able to break down a game idea into its component parts. And then there's the syntax part, the more programming part, which is how do you actually do it? So, okay, you already know, okay, I have to identify there's a door in front of the player. So how do I do that? That's when you go looking for tutorials. Okay, how to find an object in front of the player. And you'll probably find a ton of things saying, okay, just use a physics raycast. So you'll learn how to do that, learn the syntax for that, then learn how to play an animation, so on. So yeah, I would say learn how to break those parts, break the game design portions, come up with that task list, and then figure out what are the basic components, the syntax you need to use in order to achieve those things.
Yeah. Andy, do you have anything to add?
+1. Upvote. What do the kids say these days?
Pog. I
Ditto.
don't know. Ditto is way older. Golly gee. Okay, that's fair. I guess we can move on to the next part. And Andy, this is applicable to you, so I hope you don't dismiss it as well. But like, how do you go about documenting, your game jam? Like, is it something that you do as a recap at the end? Is it something that you do as you're going through the jam, doing progress snapshots? Like, what is your overall process for that? If you even want to do it, or if people should do it to, memory box that experience during the jam. Anyone can go for this. I'm not going to pinpoint.
Okay. Personally, I do like when I accomplish something, I do like a little camera capture or a video capture of my screen showing that something it works. And it's because I do devlogs sometimes. So I'm like, oh, I did it like this, and it slowly like builds up how I made the game. But only in certain times when the main features are working. And then you can also make like a little blog later after the game jam with your little videos as GIFs or GIFs, whatever the word is nowadays. And or at the end, you can just record the gameplay and upload that as a trailer and just be like, whatever. But it's important to upload a video because that helps people see how the gameplay is like. And people that may not be able to play it can see it.
Yeah, nowadays, in order to find success as a game developer, marketing is one of the things that you need to do. So yeah, game jams, being able to make a devlog, make a GIF, make a blog post, make all of those things. I think those are all very useful skills that you can learn while in the game jam. So definitely do that if you can, yeah.
Andy?
I'm not like a super famous I'm not a content creator at all, like these two fine mega famous people right here. I watch all of their stuff, which is super cool. But like, I guess sharing progress, I usually just capture like end of the day, like end of day 1, this is kind of where we got, end of day 2, this is where we got, and it's kind of fun to then look back, especially if it's like a week long thing. But also mostly just capture, when the game breaks is actually more fun. Like, because it will break. You're going super fast. You can't really plan stuff too much. And then it's fun to go back. So I don't really have much else to say other than capture, even when you have breakthroughs and even when you don't have breakthroughs, because it's all good in the end. And usually people ask, like, what do you actually capture with? It's like OBS is free. Get that, record your screen. ShareX on Windows, but on, I think, OS X, there's something else. It's free. You can capture movies, GIF, a MOV GIF, screenshots. Just grab it super quick. At least that's. I'm sure Sam and Mr. Monkey have different. Sorry, I don't want to call you Code. Yeah. First name Code.
For me, I use Premiere to make a bunch of GIFs, but someone was talking yesterday. Was Ducal? There was a really nice tool to make GIFs.
Oh yes,
a website, something.
A screen to GIF is another piece of software. that you can use to record on your screen, and you can edit the frames in the software itself, and they can get really nice tight. You can put frame rates and everything on it, so you can get it to whatever quality you want. But with sharing GIFs as well, you also have to remember that a screen recording to a GIF is a big file, so you need to play around with that. But you can get really good results if you're just taking something snappy. I think it's worth
I mean,
having.
the main thing with GIFs is that they are so simple. So making a fully edited YouTube video, yeah, that takes quite a bit of effort. But making just a GIF of your game playing, just some 5-10 seconds, yeah, just put that up on Twitter. And yeah, that's a great way to share your progress.
I tried that app that you mentioned. It like crashed my computer. I had to go
so that's good to
Task
know.
Manager, and I don't know what I did. But there's also Giazo. Giazo is like a GIF capture thing. It's probably not as good though. But maybe I'm just the special case that it didn't work.
We'll troubleshoot it, yeah.
If something Cal recommended crashed your machine, imagine jamming with him for 48 hours.
If anything you do would be causing crashes, not me. We have a question from Diaz1904. Any super beginner friendly Unity tutorials for someone who wants to play around with it a bit? Off the right bat, I can already recommend Samyam's YouTube channel and CodeMonkey's YouTube channel. And they have, correct me if I'm wrong, but you both have specific tutorials around certain, game types or content types. Is that correct? You guys can gush about this a bit more, but I'm just giving the groundwork. Either of you can go in, yeah.
Okay. I'm always like, okay. I do have like a beginner series. I made it like 2 years ago, but it is still pretty relevant. It does assume some coding knowledge, but a lot of tutorials do assume some previous coding knowledge. So if you don't know C# or any coding languages, I do recommend perhaps learning. I don't know if CodeMonkey has language learning tutorials, but he also has like a million tutorials on every possible Unity thing.
Yeah, I've done quite a lot of videos. Yeah, so I've got some on making specific mechanics, some on just general Unity, general C#, bunch of things. Actually, for the past few months, I've been working on we were talking about scope a while ago. So yeah, for the past few months, I started with an idea. Okay, why don't I make a pretty much a free course, a YouTube video. So just something 2 hours. And the end result is I'm about to release it, and it's actually going to be over 10 hours. So yeah,
Damn.
that is going to be a pretty massive tutorial, learning everything about Unity and so on. But yeah, in the context of a game jam, yeah, that's another example of how scope can very easily get out of control. So yeah, needs to be very careful. But yeah, if you want to learn, just go on YouTube, search for Unity tutorial. You'll find tons and tons of content. So yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so I guess we can go on to the next topic, which is about establishing your goals early. We touched on it a little bit here and there, but I think this is really an important aspect for all jammers, not just beginners as well. But going into a jam, like, what are you trying to achieve? That's kind of the premise of, like, is it just something you want to do just for a time sink? Is it something you want to use for learning or practicing and improving your skill set? Like, what is, you guys' sort of guidance regarding that when it comes to, when you're actually taking part in a game jam? I'm going to call on one of you. If Sam,
I want someone else to go first, because I feel like
Andy goes first. Yeah, Andy, you get to go first.
I mean, I usually, as I've said, I guess before, I usually use jams as like, I want to learn how to do X, or I want to experiment with X. So if I've experimented or learned that thing just enough, then to me, that's kind of like a successful goal, right? Achieved. Actually, I don't have any footage of it, but like, for example, I did a game jam on a boat years ago, and I wanted to make a game about throwing your iPad in the air and catching it. Like, that was kind of like an idea beforehand. Like, can you actually detect a thing being thrown in the air, check how high it is, and catching it? That was kind of like my goal, purely out of wacky curiosity. The game was called Baby Simulator, because the idea is you're going to catch it, and if you dropped it, you'd lose your score.
Also smash your iPad.
I mean, it was a work one, so it didn't actually break. But like that, like, the goal wasn't like art or anything like this. Actually, the art was incredibly simple, because you're throwing it in the air, so you can't even see the screen half the time, right? If you think about it. But it was mostly like, can you actually spin your phone? All sorts of stuff like this. So like the goal was that, and that was kind of met, even though the game screen didn't look great and stuff. Like that smaller challenge was accomplished. So that I usually try to like have it as a smaller goal. Sometimes you just want to have fun, like the duck. Which one? The wizard duck one. Sorry, there's too many duck games. That was just to kind of have fun, because I hadn't seen Cal or Ethan in a long time because of like the pandemic or whatever. So that was just to have fun. So we were kind of making it up as we went along a little bit.
It was very loose, yeah.
So that was, as long as you have your nice goal. Of course, there's a lot of people who enter jams to win, because some jams have like sponsored prizes and stuff. That's also cool as well. I don't think I've ever done a jam specifically to win a prize or a money or thing, but there are some people who do that. And those teams are like organized. They've been jamming together like hundreds of times. They work together. They've got their tools. Like it's almost like a Olympic team, right? They're entering training and stuff. And that's totally fun as well. That's kind of how they, get their kicks. But yeah.
I mean, the examples you mentioned a while ago, Super Hot and Surgeon Simulator. So yeah, that is also another thing. Even if you don't necessarily win, I don't know if those two won the first prize, but they went on to become super successful games. So that can definitely be a thing you can do. Yeah, just keep polishing.
I think Surgeon Simulator was to evaluate if that kind of idea was fun, and then because they distributed the jam game and that was kind of their goal. They then were greenlight to make the full game in kind of like that was their goal. Like, is this actually fun? Let's put it out there and then see. And then, I agree.
I think I saw like a question before saying like, what if you have a great idea and someone steals it or whatnot by putting your game jam idea out there? I saw a comment like that, and what you guys are saying just reminded me of that. So I just wanted to
ideas are always very tricky to steal, I would say, because two people can have the exact same idea. They go into their separate places. They build two completely different games. So even if you start from the same quote unquote idea, I think that. I would say don't be afraid to talk with others. That would be my view.
Yeah, and like to make a game and like market it, you kind of need to show it. So if you don't show it, no one's gonna know about your game, unfortunately. So I wouldn't worry about that. Whoever was asking that question, it's like the last thing on their mind.
No, that's I think absolutely fair to say. I think especially in an industry like your peers is also your network and everything as well. Like I think building off of your community and peers and actually learning from them as well, even if like and talking about ideas and fleshing them out is a good thing. You'll never make a one-to-one carbon copy of things. If myself and Code Monkey were both making farming games, we might have very different ideas of what farming means to each other. So even if the idea was like, oh, harvesting crops, like I could be like, oh yeah, using a tractor, getting all them up, and Hugo's like, oh no, I love my scythe and sickle. I don't know how farming works is a bad example, but you know what I mean? We could approach it in very different ways. And again, like you learn from your peers a lot, game jam or even in the workplace as well. You learn a lot. I've learned a lot from Ethan Bruins, who we jam with, Andy as well, reluctantly learning. But you learn from others. It's never a bad thing to work and lean on your peers, I think, overall. So don't worry. Is my feedback there as well, just to throw it in there. But I guess as well, Andy, you said something quite interesting earlier on as well with your jams, that you're a bit chaotic, and it's very much like trying things outside of your comfort zone as well. Like, would you all agree that that's quite something like game jams are quite suitable for, where it's a very big opportunity to actually go outside of your comfort zones, tackle things that you haven't tried before?
I think yes, because of the condensed amount of time. Like outside of the game jam context, the biggest cost for any form of money is time. Like the longer you are like working on something, you're basically pouring money into it to then hopefully get money, like just basic business. So having a very condensed amount of time to see if it's actually fun is better than kind of spending, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to spend 3 months programming this thing, and then you realize at the end of 3 months that kind of like the main fun is not there. Obviously in 3 days you can't match 3 months of work, but at least in 3 days you can kind of like prototype it very tight. And 3 days is kind of easier to digest when it comes to kind of amount of time sunk than say 3 months or 3 years even. So I definitely think having that, using it to experiment is kind of also great. Also, obviously learning tools and tech, but also using it to experiment is kind of a very nice way to see if it works, see if the idea works. At least I know at Unity, there's like an internal like hack week, like once a year. And actually like kind of the goal is, sorry, trade secrets. Kind of the goal is to kind of like to experiment, like work with team members and experiment. Some people make features, some people do all kinds of different stuff. And some stuff like from Hack Week eventually got like kind of, oh, there's actually such a cool idea, we should take it. Like Frame Debugger was one of them. And I think Monkey said the other one. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, it said Sin Machine, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I've read a bunch of things that started in Hack Weeks, which, yeah, I mean, if it starts there and works well, then yeah, you can definitely invest the resources in order to make it a proper tool.
And on the flip side as well, if you, at the end of the week, you're like, this probably hasn't worked out, right? That's also a success. You didn't spend 1 year, 10 years working on the thing then, and then it didn't work out entirely. Oh yeah, WebGL, Unity Web to WebGL started as a Hack Week thing many, many years ago. But then they had like a thing, like a spinning cube to then sort of develop and take on. So there's a lot of value in kind of seeing that as kind of a bite-sized thing. It depends what your personal goal is for that amount of time.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I know Hugo. Sam, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, sorry, I was adjusting my chair.
Don't worry.
What was the question? Let's see. It was, oh yes, I use it mostly to learn about new stuff. I know a lot of people use it to kind of try out their ideas, but I just like to learn a lot. So I'm like, let's learn a new technology, or let's learn about shaders or whatnot. I don't know. And so I try to use that time and center the theme around that in some way, or mostly I just do it for fun and just to make a project and publish it, because sometimes I'm working on longer projects and it can be a little disheartening working on a long project and not seeing any like final build. And so like doing these little jams where you can actually publish something in a day or two is nice change of pace. Be like, oh, that's right. We can do that. Keep going.
Kind of relights that fire. I was in that position last year when I started Unity, because I was working full time and I was tired at the weekend, so I didn't want to be opening Unity and playing around with it. But I think, you know, if you're working on a long project or you haven't been able to produce something and release it, releasing a game or releasing any project that you do is such a feel good thing that really makes you. I think imposter syndrome is a big deal in the industry across any space where there's a creative element to it. And not releasing games for a long time and making you go, oh, I can't make games. I'm not like that. So definitely a big benefit is that feel goodness of just releasing stuff and being like, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. And as a kind of like as a content creator more on the side, it like shows that you have these skills to people. Because the internet is pretty mean, right? They say a lot of stuff.
The internet, no, they're lovely. What are you talking about?
So like having stuff to back up what you're saying is also nice. Like a portfolio too. You can use it as like a portfolio to apply to jobs. I know I used to do that. I did little game jams and I would put it on my resume and I'd be like, oh, I made this game. Made me look a little more experienced in what I was talking about.
Yeah, I think that's another excellent benefit of game jams, using it to build a portfolio, which you can then use to find a job at a regular studio, something like that. Yeah, I think that's another great benefit.
Yeah, I think I'm in the camp of, if your entire portfolio is just game jam stuff, I would say if you're like showing off to a studio or anything like that, I would say pick your top 3 or 4 and use it like in a landing page style thing where it shows off the images or video, whatever it is. Video is usually the best to really get a snapshot idea of your game. But yeah, it can be polarizing in 2 ways. If it's too many game jam games and not an actual finished like project that you worked on, it can be like, oh, this person only does game jams. They only work in a crunch period of quickness, which is irony for the game industry being crunch related. But I would say lean for your polished projects when you're using them for your portfolio CV, but it's always still good to say that you do take part. You're actively, engaged in working towards games. It is a good sign in itself. But yeah.
But in a plus side, a lot of companies will do internal game jams or internal, like prototypes, which are kind of like to see what their next kind of game or project is. Like a lot of mobile companies that are creating a lot of mobile games, they'll very quickly they'll put together a team, make a very small game, and say it's a bit longer than a weekend, like 2 or 3 weeks. Validate that, is that fun or not, and then kind of then go back to the drawing board if not, and stuff like this before they sort of take something into production. At least the company I work at, that we do that, but we do that in the confines of the game we're currently working on. So we're like, okay, this happened before I joined the company, but they took like time, like a week or two to like experiment. Oh, maybe we can add trampolines to the game and things like this to kind of see what they maybe wanted to take a little further. I can't wait till the next one rolls around now. Now I've joined them. But a lot of bigger companies will do that. But they'll be longer than like 3 days. It will be typically longer. Like Bossa Studios, after they finish, who did Surgeon Simulator and stuff, they do so many game jams. Like before, like pretty much all the games they make have kind of been a game jam before they turn it into like a bigger game. And then they share it online to see if people stick to it or not, which is pretty cool.
I think you're funny mentioning the studios do that, but I think I can't remember. They made a battle royale parody game, and they made like a military placing game. I can't remember what they're called. Bargy, if he was here, knew he's enamored by these people. I think it's not Armored Games, but they have like a lot of ragdoll physics and whatnot.
The Totally Accurate Battle Simulator.
That's the one. Yes, that team. A lot of their games that they do and they release, it takes place from the game jam stuff scenario. This is Bargy that told me this as well. So if it's wrong, I apologize to the Totally Accurate team. Your games are very enjoyable, but a lot of their like experiments and stuff are jam titles, I believe. So definitely a good area to experiment on what your next project should be, rather than just jumping full on into production. Even from a one-person team to a small team, like it's always a good idea to do jams as a way of prototyping ideas and getting them on the table. But yeah, so I'm afraid that we have no more time for the stream. We really hope you all enjoyed this panel. And if you are participating in Global Game Jam, we can't wait to see what you make, and be sure to tag Unity as well. And I'd like to quickly open the floor to yourselves to tell people where you can find you. Andy, would you like to go first? Your socials, channels, if you have any.
I'm very unimaginative, so everything is just my name. Although thankfully my surname fits very well for mobile games.
Do you make mobile games?
Yeah, well, the whole touch thing. But so it's just that. And then my website is andytouch.xyz. Twitter is andytouch. It's like it's pretty boring, I'll be honest. That's pretty much it. I'm not a content creator like these two people. I don't do tutorials and stuff, just a lot of jams and things. But maybe I'll share some stuff in the future.
Amazing. Thank you, Andy. Sam?
I have a YouTube channel called Samyam. Sam and then yam, like the weird pink vegetable thing. I don't even know. I don't even like it, which is ironic. I have a Twitter, Samyam_YouTube. And I also have like the AI site that I made, pixilla.ai. I'll post these in the chat.
We'll have the mods posted as well, so don't worry. You don't need to panic about it. So yeah, be sure to check them out. And then Code Monkey, would you anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, so you can find me Code Monkey on YouTube. So if you want to see any kind of Unity related content, videos, tutorials, any kind of thing. And like I mentioned a while ago, I've been working for the past 3 months on a massive 10-hour course for beginners to intermediate. So if you've ever wanted to learn, stay tuned. Still got to finish editing it, but yeah, it should be out on Monday. So yeah, if you're a beginner or intermediate, I hope you'll enjoy that. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, all of you. You were fantastic. This was a very interesting panel. You all did amazing. And thank you for everyone for joining in. My name's Cal. I hope you have a wonderful Global Game Jam and a wonderful weekend. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah,
bye-bye.
Guys.